Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women with Mojo Conversation Series. In talk conversation with inspirational, motivational women. I am Jill Lebowski, the Midlife Mojo Master, and I'm on a mission to help women over 40 in their spiritual, their emotional, their physical, their hormonal health, live wonderful, healthy, happy lives using natural solutions. And I created my Women with Mojo series specifically to highlight women out there doing something good in the world, inspiring other women. Because Mojo means living your magic, right? Literally sharing your gifts with the world. So I am excited to bring on a special guest today that I met a couple of months ago who is going to do just that. And she's got a beautiful message for all of us. I encourage you to participate in the conversation in the chat, and we will do our best to either get to those questions at the end or later on. So I am very excited to introduce to you my guest, Elizabeth Onyeabor, who I'm just going to bring on in just a minute, but she's going to talk about freedom from the pressure of perfectionism, right? A message I think all women over 40 need to hear. And so as founder and chief ease of excellence officer of Habitual Happiness Hub, Elizabeth Onyeabor is on a mission to help perfectionists have a greater sense of accomplishment, be at peace with not being perfect, and live with their fullest potential. For over 25 years, Elizabeth has been mentoring and coaching corporate leaders and guiding organizational and individual transformations around the world. She is also a speaker, poet, singer-songwriter, and an award-winning best-selling author. So let's get Elizabeth in here. There she is. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Jill. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, I am so excited to have you here. This is a conversation that I desperately need to hear and have. And I just have to say to you that I was reading your bio and I just absolutely love how you introduce yourself. Let me read this, Chief Ease of Excellence Officer. So that is a wonderful name. Like right away, I'm already just like, okay, cool. Like I'm just feeling at ease. I'm in good hands with Elizabeth here. So love that name.
Great, because it's the complete opposite of what I used to have, which is the pressure for perfection.
Yeah, well, you nailed it with that one. And then the name, Habitual Happiness Hub. And especially I like the habitual part. So that's also, you really just, I'm very excited to hear your story, and because I know that there's got to be a story behind all of that for sure. For over...
Definitely.
Yeah. And so you and I met at an event back in, I think it was September, and we had a really nice phone call afterwards. And so I knew I wanted to bring you on and introduce you to my audience because I just learned a lot from you. And so I remember from our conversation that you had like this kind of like midlife mojo meltdown, for lack of a better word, when you were about 50 years old. So maybe that would be a good way to introduce yourself. But you know what? I forgot something really important that I always like to start my meetings with. So let me reel that in for one quick second. I want to always start our conversations here with finding out just like something about you that's a little different. And you mentioned speaker, poet, songwriter, all of that. But I always, if somebody never knew you, I always like to ask this question. If a stranger was just to meet you, what would be just one thing that you would want them to know about you?
It's funny because my last name is very difficult because I live in Nigeria. It's a Nigerian last name. And so it's Onyeabor. And people have difficulty pronouncing it. But what I would like the women here to know is that it actually means companion. And it was interesting because when I was looking at my, like my purpose, my mission, and all these things were coming to me about being a compassionate companion. And then I don't know how long it took me, but then I realized, oh, wait, that's my last name, companion. But I wasn't always compassionate to myself. And I would say I was more compassionate to other people, but now I'm compassionate to both.
Yeah. Wow. That, people don't even realize the power of a name, right? Something that maybe people just, take for granted, but to have something that is meaning so powerful and something that has really like you said, you can embrace that as a whole, right? That is who
Yeah.
you are. You are compassion, right? I mean, that is. So, what a wonderful little fact there. And then, of course, you just living in Nigeria. I'm sure there's a whole other story, how you ended up there. And obviously, it sounds like you married somebody from there, that region there. But yes, wonderful. So, yes, so now I've definitely, like I was saying earlier, this, the women in this group here, Midlife Mojo, we are all, I think just women in midlife in general, we're all in a state of a little bit turmoil, whether it's our physical health that we're dealing with menopause, or maybe empty nesting, or sometimes maybe, a divorce, or, some spouse that passed on, or transitioning to retirement. There's just so much going on. And then, and so I just want to hear a little bit more, because I can see a meltdown, a midlife mojo meltdown happening to so many of us. So I'd like to, I just want to hear your story. I bet you it will resonate with a lot of us.
Yeah, so just imagine, it seems on the outside like I had a great job. I had moved to Nigeria, and we had planned that for a really long time. And I was empty nesting, like, yeah, the kids are out. Like, they're adults, they're on their own. There were just so many things. And to the outside, it would seem I had the perfect life. But on the inside, I was crying. I was, just everything that had worked for me in the past, it wasn't working for me anymore, until I say basically a tsunami hit me. And just, that one final thing hit me. And that was it. I fell on my kitchen floor, and I curled into fetal position, and I just howled like a banshee, because all the hope that I had for the perfect family, being the perfect mother, being the perfect wife, being the perfect boss, all of those things, I felt so imperfect and a failure. And at that point, I couldn't see any way out of it. And so I felt like my family would be better off without me. I was such a failure. And that actually was the rebirth moment. I didn't know it at the time, because I hit rock bottom. And that was such a turning point. And I was 50. It was like a month before my 51st birthday. And I thought, oh, it's menopause. It's just my hormones going on, because I've never felt like this before. But I was wrong. I had been struggling with unacknowledged depression for decades, but I had kept myself busy. And so I didn't feel it, because I was an achiever and as a perfectionist, I was always looking for the next thing on my to-do list.
Well, I can certainly relate to all of that for sure. And, you said a couple of things in there that like hit home for me, and I think for a lot of women too. And I kept thinking when you were talking, you were saying all these words, and I kept thinking rock bottom. And then you said the words rock bottom, right? I think that we go through, we're just plowing through life, and like you said, everything on the outside looks so perfect and smiley and happy, and we're all confident and da 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 da, and what goes on inside never doesn't always reflect that. And so I'm sorry that you had to hit that rock bottom, but the fact that you think of it as your rebirth, truly is wonderful. And I hope that you've got, as we go into more in this conversation, I think that you're going to be able to share with some things with the ladies that maybe they don't have to get to that rock bottom place, because in that way. And how did you, when you were in that place, like what were some of the things that you were feeling? Like what were some of the, things that you were feeling in that time?
Well, I didn't feel good enough. Okay. I was striving for perfection, but I didn't feel good enough. Nothing I ever did was good enough. I wasn't good enough. I felt like a failure. Even when people would tell me compliments, I mean, I just didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel deserving of them. Um, I was beating myself up at night. I was tuned into the TV. That was my either reading or TV or movies. I would just veg out and fall asleep because I needed distractions. Because if I was alone with myself, I would just I mean I was the most horrible person to myself.
Which is so hard to believe, Miss Ease of Excellence, knowing you now. And yeah, it's that's why I like to know people's stories and why I even started this, because so many of us, we see people, the end result, right? And so people look at all these people and look at these women with Mojo and look at all these things they're doing. And, everybody's just a person. We all came from somewhere. We all struggle with, whether it's perfectionism or whatever it is, some kinds of things that are going on that are holding us back in our life, holding us back from moving forward, holding us back from sharing our gifts, and so forth. And so, what are some of the things that you find that perfectionists, like you said, we do a number on ourselves, right? We really do. Like you said, you can't be alone with yourself to distract. So, what are some surprises or like myths, things like that you've discovered about perfectionists, or just perfectionism in general?
Okay, like so here's the crux. Like perfectionists, we have high expectations, right? But that alone is not enough for the definition of perfectionist. And believe me, I did, a ton of research on this, because when I realized that this was what was going on for me, I was like, oh my goodness, I really need to figure this out. So what I recognized is that there's a mindset issue with us as perfectionists. And that is that we strive for perfection, but we worry that things will never be good enough, which means that we actually are never good enough. And so we have like these really high expectations, and we think we're here, but it's our perception, okay? And so we never think that we meet them, and it's the discrepancy that's the very depth of, the gap between these two things about where we think we are and where we think we should be. That's the very definition of perfectionistic traits and behaviors. So if somebody has high standards, that's excellence, okay? But the pressure is on this side of the equation, is that gap, because it's a constant, okay, I need to do better, push harder, try harder, to get it just right, to get it perfect. And of course that doesn't happen, because hello, we're human, and humans make mistakes, and humans learn. And this is part of life. But the thing is that even, and we get in a no-win situation, which is even when we're like, oh wow, I did that pretty well, I feel pretty good. Well, what's wrong with that? Oh, I didn't make it hard enough. Next time I need to set my standard even higher. So we have this kind of two-way thing going on. If we don't meet the standard that we set, then we're beating up on ourselves, not feeling good enough. When we meet the standard that we set, we say, oh, well, that standard wasn't high enough. And so it's this constant cycle in that, and that is the perfectionist mindset. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God.
I'm doing this. You shouldn't be off screen. I'm like that.
So much.
Yes. Wow. I was doing all those faces off screen. I'm like, oh my God, like she's talking to me, like, holy moly. Yeah. But and so you're saying you've actually researched, they've just shown all of that. I mean, it's not, it's not just in our, there's science behind this.
Yeah. And, and I'm here like wearing my perfectionistic, as a badge of honor, like, yeah, I'm a perfectionist, and that makes me great. And, it's so much a part of our identity as perfectionists, because we think it's the high standards that really help, set us apart, when in fact, those high standards are there regardless, but the perfectionistic pressure of the gap between where we think we are and where we should be, that actually, and the research shows us time and time again, that we are successful in spite of that, not because of it.
Wow. Wow.
Wow, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really hard for us as perfectionists to take in, because we're like, no, 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 no. I'm successful because, like, I have high standards. Yes, you have high standards, but when you don't meet those high standards, what do you do to yourself?
Right. Right.
Beat yourself up, procrastinate, you know, all or nothing. Like, today, I'm going to clean the bathroom and I'm going to take out the little toothbrush I've been saving and take every crevice out, or I'm not going to touch it for a month, because it's that all or nothing mentality,
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that paralyzing people in where they are. And when you talk about this gap, I'm literally picturing, like, I am literally picturing like a gap, like full of anxiety, insecurity, like all of this stuff that's stopping, that's just the limiting. And so I love the idea of, no matter what, right? The standard is always there. It's how you're, am I correct in this, right? How you're perceiving that. So I don't have to achieve all of this. It's how, because I think I have to achieve all of this, right? That's what's causing me the angst. It's not that I have to. Am I correct in that assessment of what you said? Or
Yeah, and it's like, and what happens if I don't? Does that mean I have no value as a person? Does that mean I'm a total failure? No. We're born worthy, but we as perfectionists don't realize that.
and so maybe perfectionists, maybe you're saying that we're doers, right? So if we're not doing something, then we are not achieving something, as opposed to, like you said, we are born worthy, we are achievers, we are greatness. What we're doing doesn't define that.
Yeah, our achievements don't define us, and then and that sense of fulfillment isn't going to come from the next thing on our to-do list. And it's interesting because I took this thing called a Strengths Finder assessment many years ago, and it said my top strength was achievement orientation, and I was like, yeah, that's me. Okay.
Yeah.
And now I look back at that and I think, well, maybe that was just another way of saying perfectionist. But they said something very interesting. So after I hit rock bottom and I was like, what's going on? What's going on with me? Like, why am I feeling this way? And I went back and I read that report, and it said, you will never be satisfied. You'll always look to the next thing. You'll have trouble celebrating your successes. And I was like, oh, so I'm doomed. Great. Like, I'm never going to be, fully fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I'm happy to report they were wrong.
Right.
I found a way to close that gap and feel good enough, regardless of, like, doesn't have to be perfect.
But that, I think, is the work, right? That's work you were willing to do. So a lot of people do these tests, or somebody labels you, right, as this type of, oh, you're a control freak, or you're, and so you kind of almost, like you said, wear that as a badge of honor. And so the fact that you've just been able to release that badge and still find that worth is commendable. But that's commendable because I know that takes work to do, like some deep inner work on yourself, because the perfectionist button does not switch off too easily at all. Do you find that, do you work mostly with women, or do you work with men too? I have never asked you that.
I started out only working with only working with women. And then the men were kind of like, well, what about us? Because even though women there are more women perfectionists, there are a lot of men perfectionists.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. And I can see, in a marriage, right? I mean, so if you're the woman who's not the perfectionist, but your husband is, that's something that too would cause a lot of issues, and just or the opposite, right? Either way, if you have that, you have high expectations for yourself. I know my family, I have high expectations for myself, and that is something they call me out on a lot. Is that your expectations are here, that maybe that's not everybody's expectation, and so that can cause some issues.
Well, and you bring up a really good point, Jill, because there are kind of three types of perfectionistic traits and behaviors. And first is socially prescribed. That's the way they call it. Basically, what we as perfectionists think other people expect of us. Okay. And then there's self-imposed perfectionistic traits and behaviors. And those are the ones that we put on ourselves. And then there's what we put on other people, okay? So that's what we expect. So we may have all three of these at the same time. We may have one that's very dominant, and it may depend on the relationship whether or not we have these high expectations. But this happens with kids, in families. Like, by the way, my mother was a perfectionist. Several of my siblings were perfectionists. They've all done some inner work too. And there's actually a DNA component to this. So it's not just, this nurture nature thing. That it's both.
My poor kids, because I think I might have passed on that gene into them. So forth.
Yeah, and then environmentally, setting expectations. So I'm 3 for 3 with mine. So
I check all those boxes. But actually, as you were talking, so something happened this week, and that in my family that was really interesting, and actually with my daughter. So she's 16, she's homeschooling, she's brilliant, beautiful, taking 7 AP classes, stat, calculus at home. I don't know how she's doing it at all. And is always an overachiever, always a straight A student. School has come so easy. In the past month, everything is just, it's junior year, the pressure of where she wants to go to college, her older brother, who she perceives to be perfect, and her comparison. And she just, in the middle of an exam, had a full-on panic attack on me. I had to stop the exam. I'd never seen her do that before. And I, as I was in a panic, right? Like, oh my gosh, like what expectation? And they are completely self-imposed. Like, if anything, I was one saying, what are you doing, taking all those classes? But again, that's that gene I passed on, that self-imposed thing. And so after we had calmed down, and she had calmed down, I should say, and so forth, and gave her my oils, and lavender helped her and got her back in a good headspace. We had a conversation, and I wish almost I had this conversation before. I probably could have even been a better mommy moment. But in trying to help her release that, like, your life will be perfect whether you end up at this college of your choice right now or not. Like, you will have all these things, whether this particular thing happens. And so to learn these tools as young women, I think, is going to be vital, and maybe, something that, if you, like, you're training us, right? But to be a role model, that, like, it reminded me, I know what I role model, and I'm like, whoa, Jill, like, maybe I got to take a step back, because again, you want to, I want to pass on the good gene, not the perfectionist one. So is there anything you have to say to that, and the young girls, or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was one of them. I was just relating to your daughter because I took the honors classes instead of the normal 6 classes. I took 8. I would fall asleep over my homework at 1 a.m., and I just thought that's what I should do, because I didn't realize it then, but I thought I needed to earn love.
Interesting.
And I knew logically my parents loved me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But somehow there was like a black hole all my life. That love that came in just like went away.
Interesting.
And that was perfectionism. So
Yeah, and
what would I
it's
say
like,
to young girls? What would I say to young girls? I would say you're worthy. You're good enough. And you don't need to prove it because you were born that way. And please, please start some self-compassion as if you were your very best friend. And one day you will become your very best friend.
I love that. I love that message. And I'm going to replay that in my mind. I'm going to replay this conversation, not even just my mind, but I mean on the video later, because I think that is a beautiful thing to pass on to her. And I love the, you don't have to prove, right? I think that's where it comes in. And maybe it's the second child syndrome. I don't, who knows? I'm an oldest child. So, I know I have some of my own siblings maybe have struggled with that as well. So I don't know, but thank you for that, because that was really useful. I think not even just to any young women out there, but to us to hear that, right? And to know that, like you said, you were that young girl. And I think so many of us are still, have in our minds, like that's who we perceive, like that's who's still here, like up here is that young girl. We haven't come out of that yet and broken through. So what
Right.
would you say to a woman who like is listening to us, who is struggling with this feeling of just not feeling, good enough? What is, so a couple of things that she can maybe either do in the moment to get out of it, or do in the bigger scheme of things?
Well, aside from treating yourself as your best friend, I mean, really compassion is key. Self-forgiveness is huge. I mean, some perfectionists don't even realize that they can forgive themselves, that self-forgiveness is an option, that making a mistake doesn't make them a bad person, you know. I have a woman who went through my course on perfectionism, and she was like, it's nice to know that, I'm not a bad person by making a mistake, and it, doesn't make me any less. And my heart just goes out to anyone like that. And then because I was there, and um, I would say in the moment, take up something like mindfulness meditation, yoga, qigong, or just start a gratitude log. And that was huge for me. I've been keeping, and I switched from gratitude to appreciation because I think there's a little different, I don't know, sense to it for me for appreciation. And I've been keeping one for 6 years.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I bet you it's also awesome to look back on as well and reflect and see what, how that's changed.
It is, which is really important to us as perfectionists, because we don't tend to give ourselves credit because we just expect. Okay, like I'll just give you a quick example, and I'll go back to high school. I was in an award ceremony. Okay, and I was like, yeah, I'm in an award ceremony. I mean, of course, I'm in an award ceremony, right? And and I asked my mother to drop me off at school for the award ceremony. And as we're driving along in the car, she says, wait a minute, there's an award ceremony and you didn't invite me? And I'm like, yeah, it's no big deal. I mean, just an award ceremony.
So I'm giggling inside because both of my children have done that to me, both of them. So yes, and I'm sure I did it to my parents too. So yeah, wow, yeah. Um,
Yeah,
very telling, very telling. It's very much
very telling. And we think we're the only ones like this, or we think it's just the way things are supposed to be.
mhm.
And it isn't until we start talking to people who are not perfectionists and we're kind of like, well, you're weird, or, that's not the way it's
Wow, you just
supposed
like
to
live
be.
your life so like free and happy and wow.
That's not right.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, yeah, well, that's kind of a nice way.
Yes.
And so they're being less rigid and all of those things, and being more flexible and having more empathy for ourselves and permission to say, it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be excellent.
Yeah, exactly. No, absolutely. And I think women of this age group, the expectations are so incredible that, and we now have this opportunity of time, right, on our hands to start to let go maybe of something. So I think when we were raising our kids and working, that there were all of these, bars to be somewhat meet. And I think that now we can kind of reflect and take this time where our kids are gone. We've just got more time on our hands to say, like, how can I be like those other people and still, feel like, at least for myself, that's where I am, find myself right now, easing towards. I just turned 50, and I always say, like, I worked really hard, my 30s, my 40s, and I want to find balance. That's my word for my 50s. It's like, I want to find this ease in not being and doing all the time and making and feeling ease inside. I was just saying to, I was talking to my coach prior to this conversation, and I said, all I keep saying is the last 2 weeks of December, I want to take off, but I've got all these things I have to do for January, but I keep wanting to take, and it's this pull, I think, that women have between, yes, we want to, and this is our time now, like you said. I mean, I'm listening to every word you said, because I can see the ease in you and having let go of that side, and how your energy around you is, and your voice, and I can see my own and hear my own in my voice as we're having this conversation. And so I hope that all women are seeing this juxtaposition. I'm emulating maybe where you are, and she's emulating where you want to be. And so I am, I know that people can, people work with you, maybe tell people how they can connect with you, maybe some way that they can get some more information from you to help them with this, because it is something that we have to get over ourselves, ladies. I mean, this is like the time in our life to thrive, to share our gifts, to travel, to have fun. And when we put these self-limiting, perfectionist, excuse my language, crap on us, it prevents us from just, living our mojo. So, please just share with us how we can get to know you more and connect with you and all those goodies.
Great. So I have elizabethonyeabor.com, and I have my blogs there. I have a book that I wrote, From the Shadows, A Journey of Self-Discovery and Renewal. And that's all about how I basically discovered, and my Mojo meltdown, and the steps I took out of it. And then I have habitualhappiness.hub.com, and I have resources there, and I am coming out with new books, and one of the books that I will be coming out with next year is The Light Within: Freedom Through Forgiveness. And because one thing I didn't mention before is that I mentioned it very briefly, but the biggest issue that I had was I thought I had failed as a mother, okay? And that it made me suicidal, actually. So I just want to say that's another point of connection. I'll be releasing that. I also have Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of those social media avenues. And I have different downloads available, different blogs that I've posted. And I also have a course for perfectionists, because until you're your own compassionate companion, I'll be there for you.
Well, that's wonderful. That is wonderful. And so I noticed also I put up here a free gift that you had for the listeners as well. So is that something you can share a little bit about?
Oh, yeah. So I have a free ebook, and you can download it from elizabethonyeabor.com/3keys, the number three keys. And you put that in the Facebook group, right, Jill? So
Yes.
it's Three Keys to Enoughness, a 30-day guide to accelerate effortless joy. And I give you step by step, just a week at a time, some practices that will help you. And I encourage you to just dip your toe in to begin with. As perfectionists, we think, oh, okay, I've got to do it all perfect, right? Um, and even if you're not a perfectionist, this will help you, okay? If you're not feeling good enough, because hey, it's not perfectionists only that don't feel good enough or feel like they're a failure. So, and Jill, you had said, when you take off more time and you can reflect, well, that was exactly my problem initially, was I had all this time to reflect, and I felt horrible. So one of the things that I talk about is to acknowledge emotion, but do it in a way that is comfortable and isn't like going to overwhelm you like a tsunami. Because if you're not used to kind of that inner reflection, it can be overwhelming. They used to call me Spock. I was so logical. So I
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
have
I can hear that. It's like going from one extreme to the other, right? You're gonna like let these floodgates open, and so we need to let the trickle happen as opposed to.
Yeah, so allow it to happen and be gentle with yourself and take your time. And you know what? If you don't get it done in 30 days, so what?
Oh, well, thank you for
Do
that.
it
Right,
at a
thank you for that release right there. Of that.
Yeah, so take your time. These are suggestions. And in fact, I start out at the beginning of the book, don't expect to do this book perfectly.
I love it. I love it. And I'm definitely want to look at your books, and I look forward to your next one coming out as well. That'll be exciting because I know you're going to help a lot of women and men with this issue that is so underlying, yet also so debilitating and so and so needed. And I think especially in this day and age of constant doing and being and on screen, and you can do your work all day long now. I mean, there's just no, and all of that. So
Mhm.
you could be literally working, 24/7. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so that 30 days guide, the keys to enoughness, a 30-day guide to accelerate effortless joy, ladies. I will put that in the comments as well so that you have that there for afterwards. But Elizabeth, I just want to thank you so much for sharing yourself, your personal story, your tips with everyone, and just joining us here on the Women with Mojo show. You really are a woman with mojo. You definitely have. This whole time I've been looking at you, and like this magic aura around you for sure, that you deliver. So I just want to thank you so much
Oh,
for being here.
thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Jill.
Yes, absolutely. All right, I want you just to hang out there for just 1 minute, Liz. I just finished talking to everybody. There we go. So what'd you think, ladies? Right? Wonderful. I only bring you guys the best. I only bring you people that I know have something to share that can really make a difference in your life. So thank you so much for watching this interview on the Women with Mojo show. And if you know of anyone or you yourself have an inspiring or motivating story that you want to share, please let me know. I would love to have you on as a guest. And just thanks again. And just remember, we are all women with mojo. everybody, and welcome to the Women with Mojo Conversation Series. Conversation with inspirational, motivational women. I am Jill Lebowski, the Midlife Mojo Master, and I'm on a mission to help women over 40 in their spiritual, their emotional,